Hey, welcome to another video and another story. Glad to have you here. Today we're diving into the recap of From Goblin to Goblin God. This is going to be part 2 of the series. But first, let's quickly recap part 1. Stick with me and let's get into it. In the last chapter, Lin Tian was reincarnated as a goblin, and the only way for him to get stronger was through mating. But since goblins don't have their own females, his only option was to find a human partner. As a former human, though, his morals wouldn't let him go through with something like that. And he couldn't just stand by and watch a human girl get violated in front of him either. So when he saw a human girl in their camp, he made up his mind to protect her no matter what. He took down every goblin that tried to lay a hand on her. In the process, he ran into members of the Holy Order, specifically Ifreya and Loder. Even though they started off hostile, they were intrigued by his ability to speak fluently and invited him to join their group. Thinking this was his chance to turn things around and team up with the humans, he agreed without hesitation. But that decision turned out to be a huge mistake. Not only did they kill the girl he was trying to protect, but they also took him captive, torturing and experimenting on him. This betrayal completely shifted his mindset, filling him with a thirst for revenge. Luckily, after his death, the system gave him another shot at life, along with a powerful system that allowed him to see different future outcomes based on his choices. Now, with the system giving him points to buy items to boost his power, Lin Tian was ready to exact revenge. He left the cave and wasted no time, taking down the first holy knight he came across, officially starting his path of vengeance. Now, let's get into the next part. One of the other hunters noticed his friend wasn't moving and wondered why it was taking him so long to come back. Thinking maybe something was off, he went to check. But before he could figure out what was going on, Lin Tian appeared out of the shadows. The guy tried to get ready for a fight, but he was totally caught off guard. Lin Tian wasn't messing around. He easily shoved the guy aside like he was nothing, completely in demon mode. Before the guy even hit the ground, Lin Tian was already on him, about to send him to the afterlife with a quick slash. Luckily for the guy, his armor absorbed most of the hit, saving him from instant death. But armor can only do so much, and the dude clearly lacked the skills to back it up. He slammed into the ground hard, drenched in sweat, realizing he was staring death in the face. Desperate, he started begging for his life, kneeling in front of Lin Tian, tears streaming down his face. He even showed Lin Tian pictures of his family, hoping the goblin, who could speak human language, might have some compassion. Lin Tian just stood over him, unimpressed, finding the whole thing pathetic. Just because Lin Tian understood human language didn't mean he had any human empathy, especially not after he'd already killed the guy's buddy without a second thought. Still, he let the guy keep talking, curiosity getting the better of him. The man kept pleading, saying he was just following orders and was forced into it. He claimed he never wanted to come to this place in the first place. Trying to show he was sincere, the guy offered Lin Tian the gold coins in his pack, saying if that wasn't enough, he could bring him fresh, young human girls after this. That comment hit a nerve with Lin Tian. It disgusted him, knowing this guy had his own daughter and still had the audacity to make such an offer. Lin Tian instantly regretted letting him talk for so long. As soon as the man tried to pitch his sick deal, Lin Tian's fury boiled over. Without hesitation, he delivered his own brutal form of justice, swiftly decapitating the man. As the head rolled across the ground and the pendant the guy had on fell, Lin Tian felt a twinge of pity for the man's family. But he also knew that sometimes it's better to remove the weeds before they spread. Some evils need to be dealt with quickly and without mercy. But before Lin Tian could reflect further, he heard a voice coming from the forest. It was unmistakably Lodor's, and they were checking up on the guards. Wasting no time, Lin Tian stripped the guard of his armor, quickly putting it on to blend in. As he slipped away into the shadows, he vowed that Lodor and Ifreya would be seeing him again very soon. A few moments later, Lodor and Ifreya arrived at the scene, confused by what had happened to their stationed guards. The cuts on the bodies were clean and swift, far too precise for the work of an ordinary goblin. Ifreya, ever the thinker, speculated that a goblin capable of such a feat must be a mutant. Letting a goblin like that escape could only mean trouble. This only fueled Lodor's frustration even more. In a fit of rage, he kicked one of the corpses, cursing under his breath that these guards couldn't even handle a simple mutant goblin. Ifreya, on the other hand, licked her lips, barely containing her excitement. The idea of getting her hands on such a unique specimen thrilled her to no end. Visions of twisted experiments danced in her mind. Night soon fell, and the moon's eerie glow bathed the forest in silver light. Somewhere in the shadows, we find Lin Tian gasping for air, finally able to stop running after what seemed like an endless escape. He was exhausted but knew he couldn't afford to drop his guard. As he caught his breath and ate what little he had, his mind kept circling back to the Holy Knights. They despised goblins with a passion, and he'd make sure to repay that hate tenfold, mirroring the brutality that goblins were infamous for. Goblins could grow stronger through mating and devouring, and Lintian's thoughts were now filled with vengeance. In this life, he wanted every man to live in fear, their only wish being a quick death, while every woman would moan and wail beneath his feet. Especially that damn Lodur and Ifreya, they'd suffer the most. But before he could get lost in his dark fantasies, the sound of rustling bushes snapped him back to the present. Instinct kicked in, and with his guard up, he assumed one of Lodur's minions had tracked him down. Without hesitation, Lintian lunged for a surprise attack. The figure in the bush, startled, tripped over a stone, giving Lintian a moment to see who, or rather what, it was. To his surprise, it wasn't a holy knight at all. It was a goblin. And even more shocking, it was a goblin who could talk. But with his momentum already in motion, Lintian couldn't stop himself. He stumbled and fell, landing awkwardly on top of the female goblin. The unexpected closeness gave him a clear view of her voluptuous body, but that wasn't his concern. His mind was racing with questions. Why was there a female goblin? He had always believed goblins were only male, reproducing by mating with other creatures. Her presence completely contradicted everything he thought he knew. As his eyes darted around in confusion, the female goblin misunderstood his intentions. She quickly sat up, her voice trembling, and begged him not to hurt her, explaining that she was only fetching water. Her ability to speak fluently startled him even more. How was she able to form sentences just like him? Seeking answers, he decided to use his appraisal skill on her. The results left him even more bewildered. While her level was nothing extraordinary, her titles were beyond belief: Fallen God, Pure Soul, and God's Blessing. But the real shock came when he discovered a hidden characteristic. If a male goblin united with her, he would become the legendary Goblin God. The revelation hit Lintian like a bolt of lightning. This female goblin wasn't just an ordinary being. She carried immense power and potential. She was the key to an unimaginable destiny, and right now, she was trembling before him, completely unaware of the extraordinary fate that rested upon her. Lintian realized that if he could mate with her, he could immediately ascend to godhood. But there was one catch. He had to find a way to unite with her first. As Lintian's intense gaze lingered, the goblin girl became even more uncomfortable. She assumed he didn't believe her story, so she shakily tried to convince him again, insisting that the goblin leader had sent her to fetch water. She was terrified, explaining that if she didn't complete her task, the clan leader would surely beat her to death. Her face reflected genuine fear. Realizing his expression had scared her, Lintian quickly apologized. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said softly. To show he meant no harm, he gently patted her back and, in a calm voice, reassured her that everything was fine. He wasn't entirely motivated by compassion, though. He was more concerned about keeping her quiet, worried that her crying might attract Lodur's minions. His unexpected kindness surprised the goblin girl. She suddenly noticed that he could talk too, and her eyes lit up with excitement. Lintian couldn't help but chuckle at how cute she looked in that moment. It made sense, though. Goblins rarely had the ability to speak, and she probably hadn't had many conversations with her fellow tribesmen. Meeting someone like him, who could talk, must have felt like a miracle to her. Just as he was starting to relax, his thoughts were interrupted again. The goblin girl had grabbed onto his cloak, clinging to him. She looked up at him with a sense of security, which took him by surprise. For the first time, she felt safe with another goblin, something she'd never experienced before. The other goblins in her tribe only beat and scolded her, but Lintian's kindness was something entirely new to her. It was the first time anyone had treated her so gently, and the goblin girl was visibly moved. She shyly suggested that if Lintian had nowhere to go, he could come back with her to her village. Her offer surprised Lintian, but he immediately realized this could be his first step toward becoming the goblin god he had recently learned about. Without hesitation, he expressed his interest in joining her. Even though he wasn't sure if Lodur and his minions were still tracking him, his top priority had shifted, getting closer to her and securing his future as the goblin god. However, he knew mating out in the open wasn't an option, as he couldn't risk being caught by Lodur's men in such a vulnerable position. His first move had to be finding a safe place to stay, just like she had suggested. Meanwhile, the goblin girl blushed as she felt the strength of Lintian's arm pressing down on her shoulder. Embarrassed but intrigued, she looked up at him and agreed to take him to her village. Lintian's eyes lit up. and a grin spread across his face. This was perfect. He could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only would he have a safe place to lay low, but this goblin tribe was also the perfect starting point for recruiting subordinates and solidifying his path to becoming the goblin god. Before long, they arrived at the goblin camp, and as expected, Lintian's unfamiliar presence immediately put the tribe on high alert. Not only was he a stranger, but he was dressed like a human, something the goblins had never seen before. His appearance made them suspicious, and the tribe grew tense, thinking he might be some sort of freak. But while the other goblins eyed him with caution, Lintian's mind was focused on the numbers. This tribe was large, and he realized that it was the perfect place to begin building his power base. With a calm and confident demeanor, Lintian addressed the gathered goblins. "I want to meet your boss," he stated. "I'm here to join your tribe." But instead of welcoming him, his bold request only riled them up. In their eyes, for an outsider to think he could just demand an audience with their boss was a clear sign of disrespect. The air grew tense as the goblins began considering killing him on the spot and sending him to meet the boss in death instead. Sensing the danger, the goblin girl quickly stepped between Lintian and the hostile tribe members. Desperately, she tried to calm them down, insisting, "He's not a bad goblin, really. Please don't hurt him." Her efforts bought Lintian a bit of time, but the commotion had already caught the attention of the boss. When the boss appeared, Lintian was taken aback. This goblin leader was unlike any goblin he'd encountered before. He carried a staff decorated with human bones, giving him an intimidating aura. His appearance was strikingly different from the goblins Lintian had once served under. The boss's power was undeniable, as Lintian could sense that his level matched that of Loder, the holy knight who had betrayed him. The goblin boss had titles that made Lintian uneasy. His title of breeding machine, paired with divine blessing, and a battle power of 200 sent a clear signal that this was no ordinary goblin chief. Lintian knew that facing this leader would be a challenge, but retreat was not an option. His plan to take control of the tribe and solidify his power had already set him on this path. Determined, Lintian braced himself, ready to make this goblin village his own, no matter the cost. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. We've got even more exciting stuff coming up, so make sure you don't miss out on the next one. Until then, take care and I'll catch you in the next episode. For now, bye.